Well, it's all over. The conference season is done with the Tories finally sort of wrapping things up today. But the big, of course, moment were the big speeches yesterday. And having watched bits and pieces of them, I can honestly say this: not one of them really comes across as anything different. Every single one who stood, every single one of them who stood on that stage basically just promised a continuation of the previous Tory government. They offered no new policies, no new ideas. It was the same old. And to be honest, it's pretty embarrassing. It should be for a party who lost so dramatically to have a conference where you just pretend that everything is normal, guys. Just don't look behind the curtain. Just ignore the fire. That is just a feature of this conference. Everything smells a bit burnt behind the scenes, but don't worry, that's just the artisanal incense that's burning throughout the conference. Honestly, embarrassing. Like genuinely embarrassing. You know, in 2019, after the after the Labour loss, there was a lot of soul searching done at that conference. There were a lot of people saying, this is what we need to do next. This is the way we need to look. This is what the future of the party should be. Fundamentally, if you look at that conference versus what happened at this one, fundamentally different. Fundamentally different. Because all you saw there was complete denial, denial, denial. And denial isn't just a river in Egypt. It's now the Conservative Party, who will elect a leader who within a year where everyone in the party will hate, and they will be wanting to get rid of them. And trust me, it will be full-scale civil war once again, because that's the Conservative Party. You've seen it break out this week. And we're going to go and cover Will Atkinson again, of his take on what he saw as this crowning achievement of this Conservative Party conference, just to show you the sheer scale of denial that is going on in the party. But before we do get to that, please do remember to click on the Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this. But before we do that, thank you very much, everyone, to who does help support the channel. Even if you just click on the like and share button, all that helps. So thank you very much. So let's crack on then into this, shall we? Obviously, going over to Conservative Home with the title of The Three Winners of This Year's Conference, Jerrick, Cleverly, and Joseph. So, there were three big winners from this year's conference. Two of them are leadership contenders. The others have been dead for almost 3 decades. They are, in turn, Robert Jerrick, James Cleverly, Keith Joseph, whose example and legacy found itself resurgence again and again and again. Jerrick went to Birmingham now as the frontrunner. He had been the first amongst MPs and even the bookies' favourite. He had had the easiest route to the final two, even if he has not yet dispatched Kimmy Badenoch in the hearts of members. As our Conservative Home survey does suggest, he is at least gaining on her, and his job was to arrive, not screw up, and smooth with as many colleagues as possible. And yet, if Will was honest here, you look at Robert Jerrick's entire career. It is full of sleaze. It is full of scandals. Even one recent scandal breaking out, which, bear in mind, if you were a leadership contender, if you were anyone else, you would have been bringing up. You would have been bringing this up completely. Bear in mind, today, you've just had Keir Starmer repay £6,000 worth of those gifts. Not only that, but he's announcing, oh yeah, we're going to look at all the review processes. We're going to have a genuine, serious look at how all these things go. and make sure, things like this don't happen again. Meanwhile, the Tories are like, oh, well, you've got serious questions to answer. The top like 10 people, because bear in mind, Keir Starmer and the rest of the government don't even just break into the top 10. It's all dominated by Conservatives. The easiest way, I do think this, easiest way if Keir Starmer could have solved this, just put a bill before Parliament, just have it as a free vote, and then just say, right, we're going to ban MP receiving gifts. You're no longer allowed to receive these things. That would have been the easiest way. Job done. Now, again, this review might be a part of it because this is becoming part of now the big conversation, which they are also reviewing about MPs being able to take second jobs. So you'll notice the Conservatives aren't talking about that section, at least not yet. I have a feeling they might be soon, though. So back to this, though. Badenoch, of course, had been the larger challenge. To try and prove that to the MPs that her popularity with the membership was so great that it would be absolutely outrageous not to put her name forward to them. This she did not manage. While her speech was, quote, a assured run-through of her Renewal 2030 agenda to try rewire, reboot, and reprogram the new post-Labour order, it was not quite enough to shift the dial. Most probably because, as Will isn't mentioning here, Kimi Badenoch has had two major scandals. The first of all, saying that she wants to slash maternity pay, pretty much. The other one was that, oh yes, some of the civil servants, some of them are, a bit bad. And we're not talking just, bad at their jobs. They were talking prison bad. Like, she wanted to, I think someone worked it out. She wanted to jail like 5,000 civil servants, something like that. And it's just like, okay. And I think there are a lot of MPs who have changed their mind on Kimi Badenoch. So we'll see what happens when she comes to the next round of the vote. But even Robert Jerrick, a man who is more ambition than he is talent, he's going to be a disaster as well. So please, by all means, do put Robert Jerrick in. So back to this. Specifically, it did not wholly now dispel the fears in the minds of colleagues who enraged by her comments on maternity pay. Whatever the explanation given by Team Badenoch as to what their chief thought she was saying, rival camps were then gifted an opportunity to nudge wavering MPs and suggest this is what every leader's media round could be like for the next 5 years. Bit optimistic, 5 years. Like I say, we'll probably be doing this whole thing again in the next 1 or 2 years. Will, it's a guarantee. So, as with her pride about her Doctor Who Twitter spat, she marked out the aspects of a Badenoch leadership that an uncommitted MPs are now more concerned about. The rolling argument, where explaining her still nebulous mission takes a very backseat to the constant process of rebuttal now and damage control. Jerrick's speech, by contrast, was very confident enough and a reputation of his objective. A desire for a, quote, new Conservative Party. This was not the Cameron-esque exercise in eloquence and excitement. It was more the extendable elements of his campaign that he had promised. Nor did it avoid the charge that he is trying a little too hard to prove his Damaskian right-wing conversion is more than just skin deep. And bear in mind, it is skin deep. He is an absolute chancer. He blows wherever the political wind thinks it will take him. And honestly, if you were the Conservative Party, and it's so bizarre, Will would say, "Oh, Jerrick's a big winner of this Conservative Party." No, he's really not. He is just ambition personified. He is like a almost miniature Boris Johnson in many respects, where his entire ambition completely outstrips any of his ability to be able to do some of these things. And he is just going and will say whatever he thinks will get him elected. And you'd think a party like the Conservative Party would have learnt their lesson, because wind this back a couple of years ago, we're talking pre-Johnson, pre-Brexit, pre all this. Years ago, Jerick would have never been allowed into this contest because he's just got too much baggage. You would have never been allowed into this contest. And the fact that they've allowed him in, the fact that he is going to be their new leader is shocking. And honestly, if you allow Jerick in, you'll be doing this within at least a year or two. Like, you'll be back in here with a year or two. Because remember, as always, doesn't matter that you've got all this hard right-wing faction here, because you've still got the One Nation Conservatives to deal with. Still the largest now faction in Parliament and by MPs. Because the right wing lost a lot of their MPs. What is your support base going to be with those MPs? How popular do you think you're suddenly going to be able to be? And once again, hold this party together. Because that has been every single challenge since, well, going back to the days of David Cameron, where he lost control of the party. Boris Johnson barely could do it. Liz Truss couldn't do it. Theresa May couldn't do it. Rishi Sunak couldn't do it. You know, the list goes on and on. How is Jerick going to do it? He's not. He's really not. But anyway, back to this. So, by of course not being a disaster, it ensured that even if Jerick was not yet run away with the contest, he is now undeniably in pole position. Which, again, to be in pole position like this, with his entire reputation, his skeletons, is shocking. But there you go. The Conservative Party has learned nothing. Having spoken to his wife at our LGBT reception, I know that he is a big fan of ABBA, Eurovision, and gardening, which is something I suppose. So with Jerick, of course, steady, and of course Badnock wobbling, the question of who will be the final two obviously remains live. Our deputy editor has made very clear that James Cleverly or Tom Tugendhat do have a route, swept up with Mel Stride's 16 MPs. Either knock out the other and, of course, add their support to your own. Even if Jerick does remain ahead in members' matchups, he would be very easier to overhaul than Badnock. And I love the idea, because once again, you're seeing this idea that, oh, don't worry, the more moderates can rein in Jerick's more extreme right-wing tendencies. Yeah, that's what they said about Boris Johnson. They said what they've said about many other these MPs. That has not happened. It's led to civil warring in the Tory party, and it will just lead to more civil warring again. Anyway, but back to this. So, has either of them, though, done enough to pip Badnock? Certainly, Tugendhat's speech yesterday fell somewhat flat, meaning to sound both too sincere and insincere at the same time. Despite flooding the conference centre with merchandise, he has not shifted the impression that his leadership bid stands for very little more than his own sense of own importance. The shadow defence now beckons. Cleverly, of course, came the close to having at least a transformational conference, yet his was very subterranean for the most 4 days. Having given the best performance of our 1922 reception, the triumph for all invited, involved, and of course imbibing, he remained sort of absent from the convention for the next 2 days, content with the rounds of self-talking and chit-chatting that the job requires. Whilst, again, Cleverly networking heavily, basically. That's what that really means. Networking very heavily was Cleverly, trying to really get those MPs. Cleverly actually doing, surprisingly, a very clever job, but there you go. Whilst his speech yesterday came across as very plodding on television, my esteemed colleagues suggest that it went down a very treat in the hall, in the spirit of Ronald Reagan. This is so bizarre that you go, oh, this speech was so good, it reminded me of Ronald Reagan. Anyway, bear in mind, Ronald Reagan might have been able to give good speeches, but policy-wise, he wasn't very that good. Anyway, Cleverly then sought to make members very feel good about being Tories again, even while exonerating them seemed very little more than normal. The optimism, laughter, and a near at least total absence of policy, the pep talk that the party needed. And the thing is, the party needs more than a pep talk. Like if you think that was it, that was like the pep talk it needed. It needs way more than just a pep talk of James Cleverly saying, "Come on, lads, let's have one for the kipper." It needs more than that. So, having, of course, received a very hearty reception, Cleverly should have at least done now enough to edge out Tugendhat on the second of the ballot, to position himself now as the candidate of the party's centre and left, or at least not of the right, and to at least overhaul Badenoch. By his jokes, and you shall know him, the race remains now remarkably open. And yet, will it provide a clear winner? Will it end all of the civil warring of the Tory party? No. How are any of these leaders going to handle this? you know? So, for whoever the next leader is, they shall act, of course, in the shadow now of my third conference victor. For those of us who have been comparing our situation to 1974 more than 1997, it is very heartening to know that the tag team of conservative revolution, from the Centre of Policy Studies to the quote, "the rest is history," has brought that message now to a wider audience. Just in time, you might say. Even if he got the date of Margaret Thatcher's victory wrong, Jerrick did lead the way in referencing that very turgid year. An exhausted Conservative government, now unsure of its principles, replaced by a very shabby Labour administration, commanding no discernible enthusiasm, followed, of course, 5 years later by a staggering victory after a recapitulation of what conservatism actually means. And yet, are you going to do that? Are you going to be able to demonstrate that? Are you going to be able to do that, considering how toxic the Tory brand is at the moment? Because that's not what it was like back in 1974. you know, the Conservative Party is an entirely different beast back to what it was from then. And yet, making these allusions to, oh, don't worry, we're about to now enter a brand new conservative golden age led by a new Thatcher. Yeah, I very much doubt it. So, Badenoch, of course, name-checked Joseph, whilst Tugendhat made much of enthusiasm for his and, of course, Thatcher's conservative revolution. The frustration of hashtag 14 years wasted acts as now a surprising springboard towards Tory Leninism. The pursuit of now Stepping Stones 2.0, a conservative revival, a national prosperity, and an end to our an end to our palpable decline. Please go and read Foundations again. I've seen this before. If you don't know what Foundations is, this is one of the brand new sort of, should we say, documents that has come out, trying to sort of re-engage sort of conservative foundations. Many of this, and of course, it comes out with all the usual stuff. We've left the European Union, which we're doing all this crazy libertarian economic things. Don't really think so. Not going to go down well, especially when we've said before, fundamentally, the UK has changed, and the Conservative Party has not changed with the UK. It has gone the exact opposite direction in many ways. So they're in for a very, I think, rude awakening almost immediately in many cases. So, in mirroring, of course, Joseph's honesty and now repudiating much of the government in which he once served, Jerrick has now aimed for his impure common ground. All but Badenoch also bears obvious similarities. Her former frontrunner, she is now appears to have very cleaned the path for an alternative candidate with a kindred agenda, but less of a reputation for making gaffes about mothers. If Badenoch does fail to make the final two, she should be used like Michael Gove after his third place finish in 2019. And any of the other candidates should be deployed with her as the Shadow Chancellor or the Duchy of Lancaster. Should you be tasked with, of course, spending the next 5 years studiously trying to work out a plan for Whitehall reform and now bring an end to, quote, the blob's miserable reign. When she alluded to, arresting over 5,000 civil servants, yeah, I don't think that's going to make for a very good campaign promotional material. I mean, look how that worked out for Project 2025. And bear in mind, both Jerick and Badnoch have been taking cues from the Heritage Foundation, who are behind Project 2025, who has a very similar theme of, jailing civil servants. Gee, I wonder where she got this idea from. Anyway, so all of this, of course, now is still a very long way off, but it was surprisingly for upbeat for a conference. My favorite of the three that I have attended, which was far from as chaotic as 2022 and as glum as 2023. The scale of defeat may not have, of course, fully settled in, but we're not 100 days now into the Labour. The voters have now started to hanker for the good old days of Rishi Sunak. It is hard not to feel optimistic. What? The good old days of do nothing Rishi Sunak. And bear in mind, he links to a poll basically saying Keir Starmer's less popular than Rishi Sunak. This is all entirely because of the winter fuel allowance. That is the only reason. Really, he is not popular. There's a lot of Labour MPs saying, "Look, we need to start really deploying, some good vibes. We need to be stopped being all doom and gloom." That is really why he's sort of not popular at the moment. But there's nothing threatening him. Like seriously, there is nothing threatening him at the moment. There is not this wide scale rebellion going on that people say there is going on. It's not there. At least not in the same way we saw the Tories openly do that. There is no election. He still has a massive majority. What's threatening him? He has still a very, very much free hand to go and pursue his agenda. So there's nothing really threatening him, to be honest. So, anyway, back to this. Let's finish it off. So if we head, of course, to Manchester in a year with at least Keir Starmer now 15 points ahead with a new leader, very unpopular or even unstable, this will be very now with a palpable sense that the opposition is still a very long and futile slog. I love how they think within a year they're just going to come back and yes, we're going to be back and challenging. Yeah. What's changed about the Conservative Party that they think they can do that? What new stuff are they offering? How are they doing this? Is the party really united? Not really. Not really at all. How sanguine now will it look? Our sanguine will look very hubristic. We have a leadership contest now to see out, and candidates are now chafing against Bob Blackman's yellow card system. Hostilities may break out as GB News looms. Yep, I really do think now hostilities are almost guaranteed, because if you've gone into this conference, especially Kimmy Badnoch, and you want to pull Robert Jerick down, you have to go after his scandals. You have to go after his record. Same for James Cleverly. James Cleverly, so much baggage himself, being attached to so much of the previous terrible Conservative administrations. Trust me, they are going to start breaking out. Hostilities will break out. Whenever we have seen these ceasefires, these armistices be declared, they have not lasted very long, and it is going to break out soon, even if it comes after this leadership contest. Hostilities will be back to normal because none of the underlying issues any of these candidates have said they are going to address. They're not going to address any of the single line issues of the Conservative Party. They are going to be going back to business as usual. The Conservative Party is going to be in a mess. This, as I said at the beginning, is pure delusion, and you're about to see it right now. So, and yet, Will finishes off with, I saw in Birmingham was the most united I have known in my 2.5 years at Conservative Now. Yeah, I don't really think so, considering what other people who were at that conference were saying as well. We know why we have lost. No, you don't. We know what has to be done. No, you don't. The work begins immediately. No, it's not. And how splendid the socialists can scheme their schemes and the libertarians can dream their dreams. But at last, we have work to do. Yeah, I don't think so. The Conservative Party is not united. It will split again into multiple factions. How are they going to deal with this? What about policy? What new policies are they going to offer that's going to, attract people to vote for them? All these things, so much stuff will just come undone at the seams, as it has every single time. This is generally very, very much so a disaster for the Conservatives. It has not been a very good conference. And if you've looked at the other people, like non-conservatives who have gone there and given their opinion of the conference, the best one I've seen was I can't remember. Was it Polly Tom being the Guardian? I can't remember if it was. It might be John Creese. He said, when I've talked to these people, they are confused. They don't know why they lost, and they are unsure about how to continue. And that has been the theme. You notice Will has not talked to, or at least mentioned not talking to, any actual attendees of this conference. But remember last time, as we said a couple of years ago, the last time Will talked to, actual Conservative conference goers, he got a bit weirded out and wished he was back watching Eurovision. So, yeah. Honestly, one of these days, I would love to go to the Conservative conference and just talk to like conference goers, like do a whole live stream and just talk to them, like just see what it is about, like what's going on. I think honestly, I've missed a trick this year. Really, like I say, I missed out going to the Labour and God, doing a live stream from this one, just talking to like people at that conference would have been amazing. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.